It's time to upgrade my NAS game and also my Plex server game with this LinkStation N1. It's an all SSD NAS with all kinds of awesome features, and I can't wait to crack this thing open and start playing with it. So what are we waiting for? Hey everybody, it's Chris from FamilyGeekery, and today we're going to be checking out the LinkStation N1 from a company called LincPlus. Now LincPlus contacted me, said, hey, would you like to check out our LinkStation? And I said, absolutely, it looks really cool. So they sent this over for my review. But full disclosure, this is my review. No money exchanged hands. And LincPlus does not get to see the video before it's published. So that being said, let's go ahead and open this thing up and check it out. Alright, so inside the box is the LinkStation N1 itself. And then of course we've got a power supply here. And the power supply looks basically like a small laptop brick. That's going to give it the power. Then of course we've got a user manual here, and then we've got this LinkStation N1 Unraid key activation instructions card. So there's going to be a license code on here to register Unraid, and Unraid is basically the operating system that's running on this NAS here. That's basically going to allow us to set up the arrays and build out our different server functions, and we're going to take a look at that. Also in the box is this little pouch here that's got a screwdriver in it and a bunch of tiny little screws. That's for attaching the drives in here. So that's nice that they included that. And that's it. Now, as far as like the size of this thing is small compared to most NASs I've ever used. Just to give you a comparison, here is a Nintendo Switch. So it's not quite as wide as a Nintendo Switch. It's a little bit taller and of course a little bit deeper. But it is absolutely tiny, and this thing is a 6-drive NAS, so it's going to allow 4 NVMe drives in here, and then 2 2.5-inch SATA drives. So you can put up to 48 terabytes of storage in here, and being in a size of basically like a small book, that's pretty darn impressive. Now to give you just a quick rundown on my experience with NASs, I think I built one years ago just using computer parts. And of course that thing was big and clunky and junky. I no longer use that, of course. I've got a Synology, like a 4-bay NAS that I've been using for several years, and I use that as a Plex server, and I use that for backing up files. And it's worked great for me over the years, but Synology does scare me a little bit. I've heard of some weird things with proprietary ways of storing their RAIDs, and if something goes wrong, you may not be able to get your data back. Luckily, knock on wood, I've never had that problem. But I do like the idea of this using a software that is independent of the device itself. And it's a software that you can run on your own computer, you can run on a mini computer, but in this case we're running it basically on what is a mini computer here. We'll go over the specs in just a second. But like I said, I've been running this NAS for a while, and I've always wondered what would it take to get into like a SSD NAS, because I've got those big 3.5-inch hard drives in there. And with those moving parts, you think, hey, it's got to be a ticking time bomb at some point. Why don't we get something with SSDs in it? And lo and behold, it exists. Here it is. And I'm happy that they reached out to me and asked me to check it out for them. Now, as far as the specs go for this thing, this has a Intel Celeron N5105 CPU. And that's a pretty recent Celeron processor. It's got 4 cores and 4 threads. It's got built-in 16 gigabytes of RAM. It's got a 128 gigabyte drive in there that's running the operating system, and it does have Bluetooth and Wi-Fi built in, but as of the time of this recording, Unraid does not support that. But if you are running some kind of a VM from here, because that's one of the things you can do with it, you can create virtual machines on here and run those. They can take advantage of that Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. So like I said, it's basically a small little computer that's got a bunch of drive bays in it, 4 NVMe, and they are full 2280 size drives. And then 2 SATA 2.5-inch drives. So speaking of drives, let's take a look at what I got here to put in this thing. And I'm going to go with 2 of these 970 Evo Plus Samsung NVMe drives. They're 2 terabytes each. So these are going to be my 2 data drives making up the array. And then it allows you to have a parity drive, and I'm going to use a SATA drive for that. So this is a 2 terabyte also. Now, I'm not a pro at this stuff, but from what I read, as long as the parity drive is the same size or bigger than your biggest drive in there, then that's going to work for the RAID. So what I think I'm going to get out of this is 4 terabytes of storage, a 2 terabyte parity, and it's going to be blazing fast. We got, like I said, SSD speeds in here. In the back we've got a 2.5 gig Ethernet jack along with a couple USBs. We got an HDMI out and an audio out, and then the power jack in. And then in the front here, underneath this door, we do have a full USB-C port here that is 10 gigabits. So getting data onto this thing is going to be super quick, whether you're doing it from the drive in the front or from the network itself. So the user manual says the first thing we should do is install the drive, so that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to start off by installing the 2.5-inch drive here. So right in the front here we have the 2 drive bays, which are labeled, looks like, left and right. So I'm just going to open this little latch here, pull out the tray, and this is going to allow me to install the SSD in here. So we're just going to take this guy here, make sure the contacts are going that way, and we're going to face the screw holes to the screw holes down here. Those should line up perfectly, and they do. And this is a metal tray here. I was expecting it to be plastic, but it is metal. So let me put a couple screws in this thing, and then we're going to slide it back in there. So I appreciate including the free screwdriver, but I'm going to go ahead and use my trusty Strabito screwdriver here because it's got the magnetic tip, and I don't want to lose any of these little screws here. So it looks like it did come with 8 screws, so might as well use all 4 in this one, and then we'll store the other 4 away in case we ever put the second drive in there. So let me sink all these in here, and I'll be right back. And it actually came with 10 screws, so you got a couple extra just in case you lose some. But here it is all mounted up with the 4 screws, and I'm just going to line this thing back up and push it in there and then lock it in. It's that easy. So that's what you'd do for both of your 2.5-inch drives if you were using 2 of them. But now I'm going to go ahead and flip this thing over, because on the bottom here is where we're going to put in the NVMe drives, and I'm just going to open up one of these here. And again, nice solid metal plate here, and it's got some heatsink compound here that once we get the drives in, we'll be able to peel this sticker off here and have some heat sinks on the chips. So let me go ahead and open up these boxes, and we'll install the NVMe drives. Alright, so taking a look in the NVMe slots here, we've got 2 slots in here, and we don't have to worry about tiny little screws because they have little spring-loaded keepers down here. So we're just going to lay them in here, lay them down flat, and then get this keeper around the notch that's going to hold it in. So let me go ahead and grab these, put them in at a slight angle, kind of wiggle them in until you don't see the contacts right here anymore. That way you know they're fully seated. I'm just going to hold that down, and boy, that's easy. I wish every motherboard made was made like that, because I can't tell you how many times I've struggled finding the right bit or dealing with silly little screws. That is, of course, before I got this sexy thing. So that's it. Those things are in there. Now, don't tell anybody, but what I'm going to do is I'm not going to take this sticker off yet. I'm going to go ahead and just leave it on here just while we're testing, just in case I decide to try some different drives or move the drives around. I don't want to get these things stuck to them just yet. So don't worry, this is just temporary. I'll do the right thing when it's time. So just close this down, and that's it. So really, if I wasn't talking through this thing, it would have taken me a whole, 45 seconds to get all 3 drives in there, and it's done. So we're ready to get this thing powered up and hooked up to the network, and then we're going to console into it. Alright, so I've got the power supply hooked up. I've got a Cat 5 cable coming in the back here, or Cat 6 rather, going in the back there for the network. And we've got the power button over here on the right, so let's go ahead and push that. And while that's booting up, I'll tell you that I did try to boot this thing up with the mouse and keyboard and monitor plugged in, because I've never seen that done before. I just wanted to see what it looked like, and basically it looked exactly like any other Linux computer booting up. Just a bunch of text scrolling up the screen, a bunch of different services being turned on, and then eventually it had a prompt for login. So if you do plug into it, you can actually do everything like that and run it probably command line, but it's going to be a lot easier using the web interface which is what we're about to look at. Now, before we look at that, let's look at these little lights up here. Maybe hard to see on the screen here, but basically we've got two lights right here called S1 and S2. That's going to be just showing the status of the two SATA drives. So we got S1 lit up, S2 is not. And then we've got 4 M's here, and that's going to be for your M.2s or your NVMe's. So I've got 1 and 2 lit up, and then of course 3 and 4 are not. And then the last light here is for the power. So let me switch over to a computer, and we're going to take a look at the software. Alright, so now I'm over on the computer, and if the audio sounds different, that's because I'm talking into a much better microphone. But after you boot up your LinkStation, you'll want to give it about 1 minute to fully boot up before you try to log into it. But they made it super easy to log in. Just going to open up a browser. Of course, this has got to be a computer that's connected on the same network as what you've got plugged into the back of the LinkStation. And in your browser, you're just going to type in tower.local. Now, tower is just the default name that they use to name this device. You can change that inside the device if you want to, but if you do change that, then you'll want to make sure that you change that in your URL also. So the first time you log in, it's going to have you set a password. Take note that your username is going to be root, and you can't change that because we're basically setting up the password for the root user. So I'm going to set a password real quick. So now that we've logged in, we've got an option of starting a free 30-day trial, or we can redeem our activation code. Now the LinkStation does come with that license code, but on the card it does say that they suggest that you do the free 30-day trial because once you activate that code, it says you cannot return that LinkStation again. So if you have some kind of hardware problem with it, or if you want to return it for whatever reason, you won't be able to. So for that reason, I'm going to go ahead and start the free 30-day trial and then go from there. And then once everything's up and running, then I'll go ahead and put in that code. So to do this, you have to have an Unraid account. So I'm going to go ahead and set that up, and I'll be back when that's done. All right, so once you've created your account and then confirmed your email address and then logged back into your account, then you're going to get this start your free 30-day trial. And supposedly this 30-day trial is like a complete full pro registration, which means you have no drive limitations. I believe the license that comes with this may have a 6 drive limitation, but Unraid is always changing their licenses, so make sure that you're checking what the current license and pricing scheme is when you're going to set this up. So let's confirm that. And success. We've got a trial key installed, and it looks like we're ready to go. So let's go ahead and head over to the dashboard. And from the dashboard, you can see, some hardware stuff, the CPU, the RAM. Looks like a little utilization chart here for the CPU. That's pretty cool. And then over to the right here, we've got some unassigned drives, and we have no array yet. So that's what we have to do first. Before we can start doing any of the cool stuff with this thing, we got to set up an array first. So let's go over to main. And this is going to be all the disks that we set up. But if we scroll down to the bottom, we should see all of our disks that are ready for us. So here's the flash disk. This is just a little 4 gig USB drive that's inside that's running basically this Unraid software. And then here's my 3 drives here. I've got 2 Samsung 2 terabyte NVMe's, and then the 1 Team Group 2 terabyte SATA. So far so good. Let's go ahead and assign these. I'm going to assign the parity drive as that Team 2 terabyte, and then I'm going to set up the 2 Samsungs as disk 1 and disk 2. And now that I've got this set up, it says all data is going to be overwritten. That's fine. These are brand new drives. So let's scroll down, and now we have to hit start. And it says start will record all disk information, bring the array online, and start parity sync. The array will be immediately available, but unprotected until parity sync completes. And that's fine since we have nothing on here anyways. So again, it says parity disk content will be overwritten. So I guess this is assuming that the 2 data disks may have had a RAID set up on them before, but in our case, everything is brand new. So let's proceed. And just like that, looks like we've got our array set up now. And it's telling us that it is going through parity check, so that's fine. We'll let that do that. But it looks like everything is good to go. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to the Apps tab and click install to download and install the community applications. So we're going to do that. And this plugin is going to allow us to get a whole bunch of different types of apps that this thing can run that other people have created. So it says that these are third-party additions. I understand. And I guess it's got both Docker containers and plugin applications. Plugins are designed for OS enhancement and run with full privileges to your system. So you got to confirm that also. And depending on what you want to do with your NAS, this is going to be where you find everything. Maybe it's media applications and media servers like Plex. Maybe it's game servers. Maybe it's backup. But there's all kinds of things here in the app catalog now that we can play around with. And the main thing I want to do is get Plex server up and running on here. Now, one thing that I forgot to do was to actually format these drives. Since they were brand new, it was listing over here that they were unmountable. So there was down here a little thing that said format, and you had to click on a little checkbox. I'm sorry that I didn't show that. But as soon as I clicked that format, then it started formatting these drives, and it's continuing the parity sync. It looks like we're at 12% now. So now that we have our drive showing up here, and it's showing the array is 4 terabytes large, which is what we expected. Now we can go over to shares, and we want to create a new share that I can use for Plex once I install it. So I'm going to click Add Share. I'm just going to call it Movies, and click Add. And now that's set up. So if I go back to shares again, now I can see the ones that were pre-installed once we got there. And here's the new movies that's set up. So now let's go ahead and install the Plex server. So I'm going to go back to the apps. I'm just going to search for Plex. And you can see there's several different versions we can try out. In fact, there's 96 things that came back for the search term Plex. But I see this one here flagged as official, and that's the Plex media server. So we're going to go ahead and install this one. So once you have this installed, there are a couple things here on the left. You see these asterisks that you have to fill out. So you've got host path 2 and host path 3, and this looks like this is where it's going to be transcoding your media. So I just put that in the temp that I found in here. And then for the data, I actually went through and selected, when I hit the drop down, I was able to select my share that I created as movies. Now also there's this key here from the plex.tv/claim. That's something that you log into if you've already got a Plex account. And once you go to this link, it'll give you a claim code once you log in. I'm going to paste that in here, and then I'm going to come down and hit apply, but I'm going to keep this hidden from you just in case. Now it looks like it's installing the Plex server from the Docker, and it says that the script is all done. So we can click on done. All right, the next thing I want to do is install a file manager so I can get some files on here to test out that Plex. So I'm going to go back to apps again and just search for file manager. And we're going to try out this Dynamics file manager. So let's install that. And let's click on done. And now if we go back to our shares and click on the little arrow next to movies here, so that said browse, and there's nothing in here. So we can create probably subfolders in here. Yep, new folders. I'm just going to go ahead and upload, and I'm just going to grab one of my own YouTube videos and upload that as a test. And that file is now uploading right here. I'm going to let that go ahead and complete, and then we're going to test it out in Plex. All right, it looks like that YouTube video is completed uploading, and I've went ahead and logged into Plex here. And as soon as I went into my account, it shows a server setup here, and it gives me an option of changing my name here. So I'm just going to change this to LinkStation N1 and click next. And it says, let's go ahead and organize my media into a library. So let's click add library.
and I'm going to say it's movies. We'll keep the name movies, and then browse for a media folder. And when I'm adding this folder, remember I set up that folder as the data folder when I was installing the server. So if I click on data here, I can actually see my YouTube video in here, so I know that this is the right folder. So let's go ahead and click add. And if I had separated a bunch of different subfolders in there, I'm sure I would have seen them within this data folder here. So let's click add library and next, and then let's finish. So it looks like it's updating the library, but I'm going to find over here this movies library that I set up that says that it's on the LinkStation N1. And when I click on that, here is my YouTube video. Let's go ahead and play it. Hey, that's me. So let's go ahead and stop that before I copyright strike myself. But that's it. I've got a Plex server running on that super fast NVMe based NAS, and it was fairly easy to set up. Again, this is my first time using Unraid. This is my first time using that LinkStation N1, and I'm sure I'm going to keep on learning about it and install some more apps and try out maybe some of those game servers. But for right now, I'm happy that I got Plex up and running so quickly.
Alright, so it's been about a week since I started recording, since I got this thing all set up, and it's been running ever since 24/7, non-stop, and it's just been rock solid. I've even kept the web page open on my computer, and unlike some other NASs I've used before, it doesn't auto-log you out. You may be able to set it up to do so, but I like that I can just go right back to the browser page and see the status of the RAID and see, the status of the hardware, and it just works great. So like I said, it's been running ever since, and I've had zero issues with it. And just for full disclosure, remember I said I wasn't going to take this off yet, just because I knew I was going to be leaving it running for a long time. I just left the door off of it for right now. I think I've done enough testing that I'm ready to go ahead and peel this off and stick it down on those drives and consider this done. Now I still have 2 open drive bays over here for 2 more NVMe drives, and of course I've got another SATA drive under here that I can put in. So I have plenty of expandability for the future, and so far I'm happy with this 4 gigabytes of SSD that I've got in here right now. Now I want to touch back on the license thing here. Now remember, when we installed this, all we did was click on the 30-day free trial, and that was what they had suggested. And I reached out to the company LincPlus to find out just a little bit more clarification, because originally I heard there may be a lifetime license, and then I wasn't sure what this was because this one doesn't actually list what it is. Now I know as soon as I scratch this off and plug it into the website, it'll tell me exactly what it is. But they sent me back a reply, and they said basically they used to have a lifetime license of Unraid included with this LinkStation N1, but because Unraid changed their license terms, they couldn't do that anymore, and now the one that they send out is a 1-month license. So that's why they suggest to go ahead and do the 30 days first, get everything set up, get used to it, and then after those 30 days are up, put in your code, you get another 30 days, so you can play for it basically with 60 days, and then you'll have to start paying for a license from there. Now, in addition to that, they said that all the devices that they have that get shipped out are completely random. They don't know which one is which as far as which one's going to come with a lifetime license and which one's going to come with a 30-day license. But the lifetime license only uses the older version of Unraid and cannot be upgraded to the newest version of Unraid, whereas the 30-day license is using the newest version of Unraid. So hopefully that isn't super confusing. It makes sense to me. If you have any questions, let me know. I'll answer what I can. And of course, you can always email LincPlus if you have any more specific questions. They were very quick to answer everything that I've asked them so far. Now, in addition to all of that, they did mention that they are working on their own operating system, and it's called LinkOS. And they said once that's finished, it's going to be completely free. So it's good that we do have options. I imagine that since this is basically just a tiny computer, you could probably install LinkOS on the internal drive that's in there, or you could leave Unraid running on the internal drive, and just depends on which one you feel more comfortable with. So I'll be keeping an eye out to see when that Link OS comes out. Now let's go ahead and wrap up this video with some final thoughts. From the very beginning, I told you I was looking for a NAS that was SSD based, and this is exactly that. It's using basically the quickest type of SSD that you can install right now, which keeps it blazing fast, and it keeps it nice and small, and basically silent. The hardware itself has been running great. The software, of course, that's independent of LincPlus, but the software that we're using right now as far as Unraid, it was fairly easy to set up. It was fairly easy to add that Plex server to it, and even though I've never used it before, I had it up and running in no time. So overall, I am very happy with this unit, and I'm going to start loading it up with all kinds of Plex media, so I can start using this as my main Plex server now, because I have noticed since I've been using this that my old Plex server, which I still use, there is a lot of loading time. When you click on a movie, you get the little spinny, and it has to load from that disk, and I imagine this one is not going to have that problem at all. So I'm excited to keep using it, and I do thank LincPlus for reaching out to me to test this out for them. If you want some more information about the device or about the company itself, I'll leave some links down in the description below so you can go check them out. But I think that's going to wrap up for this video. As I learn more and more about this system, and as I learn more and more about Unraid, I may publish some more videos of things that I learn, and little tutorials on how to set this thing up. So go ahead and click that subscribe button so you don't miss that. But I hope this video was helpful for you. If it was, I'd appreciate a thumbs up. If you want to see more stuff, go check out the rest of the channel. I thank you as always for watching, and until next time, peace out and geek out.